everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields-Milburn.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus, and together we are the Minimalists.
We got Alabama here.
Hi, everybody.
TK Coleman.
Have a holly jolly Christmas.
We got the rest of our team here in the studio as well. Coming up today on this free public minimal episode, we're speaking with Dr. Nicole LePera, and we're talking to a listener about dealing with guilt. We also have an outstanding lightning round segment, a live stream question, and a listener tip for you. You can check out the full 3-hour Maximal edition of episode 370, where we answer 4 times the questions and we dive deep into several simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalists, or click the link in the description. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free, because say it with me, y'all. Advertisements suck. All right, y'all. Let's start with our callers. If you have a question or comment for our show, give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. Our first question today is from Colleen.
Hi, my name is Colleen. I'm a Patreon subscriber from Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. For a little bit of background, I was diagnosed with severe degenerative disc disease early in my 20s. And according to my doctor, I have the back of an 87-year-old. So this is kind of a little frame of why I'm asking the questions that I am. So the first being, how can I release the guilt that I feel when others, like specifically my husband, want to help me and really end up pulling a bit more of the weight because I can't do certain things, like bending and that sort of thing are very difficult for me. And the second being, I worry that in some ways I'm not the involved parent because I can't run around with my daughter. I can't run around with the baby that is on the way here in November. And I struggle with that. I don't want them to remember that when they get older, that mom couldn't run around. So I just really am looking for some ways to poke holes in both of these feelings that I'm having as part of my chronic pain that I deal with daily.
Wow. Colleen, there's a whole lot of weight here. And joining us in the studio to help us answer this question is former podcast guest and one of our favorite people in the world, Dr. Nicole LePera is here.
Yes!
So, Dr. LePera, you've got a new book out. We're going to be talking about it, and I think this is the perfect opportunity to I'll hold it up here if you're watching the video version of the podcast, How to Meet Yourself. I love this because it's a workbook.
Yeah.
And whenever I usually think about workbooks, I'm like, oh, I feel like my daughter whenever I'm forced to I hand homework over to her and she's like, oh no. I think about, but then I crack this open. I'm like, oh no, this is welcoming. This is completely different. And we're talking to Colleen here about guilt, the guilt that she's experiencing from, well, the what she's setting up for other people in her life. She's setting up sort of these expectations that she thinks other people might have of her, and therefore she knows she can't meet those expectations. And it is causing a lot of additional pain in her life. She's already experiencing pain. She has a back of an 87-year-old, which I can certainly relate to that. And I broke my back when I was young, and I've had all kinds of back problems, and it's limited me in a way, right? But I found that freedom is sometimes found in the acceptance of our limitations. And you talk about these things in the new workbook, but what insights do you have for Colleen?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you all for having me back on again. Guilt is definitely something that I know very much through my own personal journey. I call it the feel bads. I've been plagued with them for as long as I can remember. And to speak to your very wise point, Joshua, oftentimes when we set up an expectation or we imagine others have expectations of us, often in our relationships, is when we end up feeling badly or feeling guilty. And to speak to your point, in terms of acceptance and even feeling really near and dear, Colleen, to your question, having had myself a mother who was riddled with chronic pain and very much largely unable to be physically active with me, I really want to differentiate, again, going back to expectations. And it sounds like there's a lot of expectation around your physical abilities. And of course, that's a very difficult thing, I think, as our body declines at whatever age that is, to throw away that expectation, to sit in the acceptance of the much more limited, mobility that we might have. But I also want to offer how important presence in and of itself is, outside of, doing things with our children, our loved ones, or whomever that might be, performing in a very real active way in our relationships. As far as I see it, being present to our children and thinking back. And when I'm sharing about my own mom, not only was she physically not present for me, emotionally and attentionally, she also wasn't present. And that attentional neglect, or that, disconnection that I suffered, actually carried more of damage and wounding for myself than her lack of physical presence. So in terms of, guilt, really unpacking first and foremost, what are the expectations that we have on ourselves outside of what we think other people are wanting us to do? A lot of times we suffer or create our own suffering because we have an idea of what it should or shouldn't be, and learning to accept our physical limitations, but also to explore other ways to be fully present with our children will probably be the gift that they are looking to have beyond you being physically able and capable.
It seems to me that we show up and notice the ways in which we're unable to show up, as opposed to looking at how we can't. Look, I can't show up physically in this environment because of some limitation I have. But here are the 7 other ways that I actually can be there. I can be there in terms of my attention, my emotional well-being, my stability, my support for this person. Ryan, this morning, you came barreling into the studio as he usually does.
Yes.
There's a cloud.
Whatever. I was 5 minutes early. I left my house way too soon. No, I came. Oh, go ahead.
I said you came in, you said you were talking about the guilt that you had been feeling. And I wanted you to reveal that story to Nicole here, because I thought she might have some nice insights on it.
Yeah. So I love what you're saying about being present. And when I am giving myself torment with guilt, it is completely taking me out of the moment. Right. So my problem with guilt is I go out of my way to think about all my past mistakes, the past things that I've done where I've wronged people, bad decisions I've made. And I fester this guilt that I've already went through, by the way. So when I feel guilty, not only does it take me out of the moment, but it's also repeating the process that I already went through. So the other night, what I was excited about is I had this huge revelation with my own guilt. So I'm laying in bed, I can't sleep. And that's for some reason, mostly when all the guilt comes up. And I'm starting to beat myself up over some things. And I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? And I'm like, well, Ryan, you must like feeling guilty. And I'm like, no, that's stupid. Why would I like feeling guilty? And then I'm like, well, you consistently beat yourself up with it. You must feel like you're getting something out of it. And then it hit me. To me, my guilt is sanctimonious. I was programmed as a kid, from a child, as being raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, which is just a very Christian religion. Fundamentalist. And I was taught that feeling guilty was a good thing.
Virtuous.
Yeah, exactly. So as soon as I had that revelation where I'm like, oh, this, it's not that I like feeling guilty as much as I like feeling virtuous. And the more guilty I feel, then the more virtuous I must be. But as soon as I had that revelation, I was like, oh, I don't have to beat myself up. And it was so much easier to even in that moment, it was easy to let go of a lot of that guilt. So, when I think about Colleen's question here, it's not about, trying to look at every single thing that you can't do. It's okay to feel guilty. Don't stew in that guilt because it's taking you out of the moment. And then there are other things you can do that, where you can add value to other people's lives, where instead she's kind of beating herself up, feeling like she is maybe taking value. But that's kind of where I'm at with it now. It's okay, if I feel guilty about something, I need to stop doing things that make me feel guilty. That's step number 1. And then, step number 2 is go out of my way to be the person that I want to be and show up how I'm able to show up. And it's just 3 days of this, I have not beat myself up, not nearly as much as what I used to. Yeah.
You're saying something really wise in terms of the energy and attentional expenditure that happens when we are ruminating on anything, a guilt-inducing past event or whatever it might be, and upsetting, when we're oftentimes carrying our own suffering, when we're thinking about it. And to speak to your point, it often does happen when we don't have that external focus of the day's events and the endless distractions that many of us have. So at night, in the mornings, when our attention isn't elsewhere, we can really spin in our mind. And to speak to your point, it really is energy expenditure. It's attentional expenditure. It's removing the focus from being not only present, but being able to actualize our true thoughts and feelings. And this really maps onto the book in terms of when you say sanctimonious, a lot of times when we're feeling guilty about an actual inner desire and instinct, maybe an actual aspect of our authentic self. And yet usually based on past experiences, conditioned reasons, areas, circumstances, environments where it wasn't safe, or where we weren't, we didn't have the curious parent to allow us to express ourselves, we then limit, and we're perception then managing in a way. We have an idea of what's moral, of what's sanctimonious, of what's good, right, bad, or whatever it is person, and then we use that as our touch point. And what we're really, though, doing is oftentimes suppressing actual aspects of our desires, our inner wants, our longings, and ultimately things that make us us.
Yeah.
There was this episode of Fresh Off the Boat where one of the lead characters picks up his cousin at the airport, and he reaches for his luggage and says, "I got it." And then his cousin says, No, I'll carry it. And he goes, "No, I'll carry it." And the two of them start wrestling in the airport over who's going to carry the luggage. They get to the door. One cousin runs to the door to be first to open it for the other, and the other races him, and they trip over each other to be the guy who gets to open the door for the other guy. And the amusing thing about it is that both of these guys had this highly developed capacity to be generous, but only if they were the ones who got to be generous. And love isn't measured just by our capacity to give, but also by our capacity to allow others to have the opportunity to give. It's like with compliments, right? So much easier to give one, but as soon as you try to give me one, I'm going to start putting up all sorts of defenses and explaining it away. My brother took me out one time and he reached for the check to pay for it. And I says, no, man, I got it. And he says, "Don't do that. I got it." And I go, no, I got it. And he says, "Look, man, I love doing things for people. There's a special joy that I get out of it. When you refuse to let me pay for the meal, you're actually taking away an opportunity for me to do something for you, which is what gives me joy." And it's the first time that I felt guilty in reverse. Guilty not for letting someone else do something for me, but for refusing to let someone else do for me. And, one of the things I would just say here is that the people in your life, they love you. And I would encourage you to not reduce their love to a transaction that says, if you do something for me, that means I am obligated to do something of equal capacity for you, but rather to allow them to love you, to allow them to help you and say, this is a part of what love is. You are giving me something that I can't give back to you. And that's what makes the relationship healthy.
Yeah.
That's really, really beautiful, TK. And there's so much that I see in my own past in terms of driving to perform in a very similar way in my relationships, always trying to, be the do-gooder, grab that check, be the supportive friend. And I really had to explore for myself how difficult it has and continues to be for me to be on that receiving end, especially for me around emotional support. Thinking back to that mom who was very emotionally unavailable, I have had, a very habitual pattern of not having someone show up to meet my emotional needs. So I have a very deep-rooted, feeling of unworthiness to even ask. And I have beautiful partners that live with me and are endlessly available to support me. And there's so many moments where it's so hard for me to gesture, to directly say I need support. And actually, I do quite the opposite sometimes. I put my daggers out. I say, why aren't you helping and supporting me? And in reality, I've had to explore my participation in that pattern, which is it's deeply uncomfortable to be someone who is in need and is in a state of vulnerability. So going back to Colleen, really exploring how it is for you to be on that receiving end and possibly, uncovering that deep discomfort, because as logical as it is, it's very hard for a lot of us to receive.
Yeah. I want to say one quick thing about this receiving compliments. I just realized I have this story I tell myself where I'm not good enough. I'm not, I'm not the man I want to be. And I, repeat this narrative a lot. And when someone gives me a compliment, it makes that narrative not true. And there's something about that. That's why it's hard for me to receive compliments. It's because I'm telling myself this story, and when you give me a compliment, I'm like, well, that can't be true because this is my story. Yes. Clearly, you don't know who I am.
It's incongruous with the narrative you've created about yourself, right? And Ryan, I've realized that I don't like the way you treat my best friend.
Thanks, man. Thanks for sticking up for me.
I'm gonna have to ask you to stop.
Okay.
Colleen, I'd love to send you a copy of the book how to meet yourself. Before we wrap up her question, though, Nicole, I wanted to talk to you about last couple times we've had you on the podcast. It was your first book, How to Do the Work. This is actually doing the work, though, ironically, right? Because it's a workbook of sorts. What was the impetus of writing the book?
Writing How to Do the Work as practical as, I attempted to make it. At the end of every chapter, there's journal prompts and, tools to use. I was very clear as I was writing it that there was so much more of the journey. And my hope was to offer people a roadmap, regardless of where they are on their journey, just starting off well into it, to be able to have that reference point, and also honoring the fact that, our journeys look different. We take different amounts of time at different stages. So really giving people that home base to kind of come back to, check in on, and, kind of referencing also, I think the first question I got after How to Do the Work was, wow, there's so much to be conscious of. How do I even begin to explore all of this nature of my being? So that became the natural next step, was to provide the workbook of that exact journey and that roadmap.
So good.
Ryan, what time is it?
You know what time it is. It's time for the lightning round, where we answer your questions from TikTok.
Yes, indeed. You can follow The Minimalists on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Minimalists. During the lightning round, this is where we each have 60 seconds on the clock to answer your questions with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. We put the text of these minimal maxims in the show notes so you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media. If you'd like, you can find those show notes at theminimalists.com/podcast, or we deliver them straight to your inbox every Monday for free. We'll never send you spam or junk or advertisements, but if you're on our email list, we'll send you our minimal maxims each week, our podcast show notes, and every Thursday, we also have the simple newsletter. Alabama, it looks like Hannah from TikTok has a question for us.
I go by the Fred Rogers idea of look for the helpers, but you warn that helpers could enable more problems. Where does the desire to help come from, and how do we know when to act on it?
So Danny Unknown, for some context real quick before we start the clock, Danny Unknown, he put up a TikTok on our TikTok account, which Social Jess then she shared, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, she's out right now on maternity leave. Congratulations to Social Jess.
I'm so excited for her and her husband. Yeah.
They have their first kid now. And it was so late that they named it TK Coleman.
It's funny because TK's always late.
This is the main reason Ryan wanted to bring you on board.
That's right. Someone who's later than me.
See, that's so wrong. I feel like I beat Ryan here so many times. But
including today.
I'm like Dennis Rodman. It's like my reputation is so bad that it's going to take at least 3 years of being the first guy here to even remotely become associated with
Josh gets here like 6 a.m., so good luck.
Well, the Dennis Rodman thing is mainly because you walked in here with a nose ring and a wedding dress on.
And you had leper spotted hair.
Anyway,
come on, though. Dennis Rodman, that is so badass, though, man.
Oh, yeah. He's dude, punk rock.
He is so punk rock, dude.
Anyway, we put this video up on TikTok, and it basically said, hey, the helper is one of the most dangerous people in the world because he will tear an eagle out of the sky to keep him from falling, or tear a fish out of the sea to keep him from drowning.
So the helper is an actual Enneagram personality trait.
That's right.
And this would be like the unhealthy version of the helper.
Oh, yeah.
And so when
one of the things. Yeah.
Exactly. And so go ahead and put 60 seconds on the clock for me, Professor Sean. I'll give you something pithy and we'll unpack this together. To support someone is to accept them for who they are without trying to change them, manipulate them, or persuade them. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about support.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm talking about help, I'm talking about someone who forces someone to change, manipulates them, moves them in my direction, convinces them, coerces them to my point of view. And that's when helping someone becomes unhealthy. If you want to help someone in the Fred Rogers sense because you want to provide support for them when they need support, I really need to lean against you, TK. TK has allowed me to lean against him. Ryan has certainly allowed me to lean against him. It has helped me, but he wasn't looking to help me in those scenarios. He was looking to be that support structure so that I could be the best version of me.
Yeah. All right. Give me 60 seconds. I'm about to flow. Oh man, my pithy answer is this: you can't help someone who doesn't desire help, and I think this is where the big problem is with people who go out of their way to just help other people. Now, the look for the helpers, that whole philosophy, I love that, because during times of distress, we want to look for the people who are there to support, who are there to help wherever the help is desired and needed. But the problem is what Josh just said. When we try to help someone who doesn't want help, like that's where we're not doing that person any service, and we're definitely doing ourselves a disservice. So I remember someone asked me to sit down with someone else. I'm trying to be as ambiguous as possible. And they were like, this person really needs your help. And so I was 27, 28 years old. And I said, all right, I'm going to help them. And I sat down in stone cold face and I realized oh, this person doesn't want to be helped. And that is where I learned that lesson.
Ryan, it's the thing about the helper, the spirit of the Fred Rogers maxim here, look for the helpers. What he's really saying here is look for the supporters, the people who are willing to support you when you are asking for that help. When I'm talking about the danger of the helper, I'm talking about the person who goes around and tries to change everyone because they end up shooting all over everyone else. We were talking about this on the private podcast earlier about when you start to identify the universal shoulds for other people.
Yeah, let me tell you what's wrong with you.
Yes.
Let me tell you what you should be doing.
Let me tell you what you need.
Right. Let me drag you to success, kicking and screaming. Yeah. Well, that's not success, it's failure. And so if I am forcing help upon you, then no one is helped. I feel bad because you didn't make the change. And then you feel bad because I was manipulating you, changing you. And also now you feel like you should do the thing that I wanted you to do. Let's throw 60 seconds on the clock for TK Coleman.
Yeah. If you're trying to be a hero for someone that would rather save themselves, then you're really just a villain in disguise. You're a villain with a cool Halloween costume, man. You're most helpful when you respect other people's intention to evolve. If someone is saying, hey, no, please don't save me. I've got it. I'm okay. Even if I'm struggling a little bit, I want to work through this process on my own and do it without you. And you insist, no, I'm going to help you. Then that's really not for them. That's just for their ego. And as I heard it said before, of all crimes, the greatest treason is to do the right thing for the wrong reason. Ooh. And that's the wrong reason to help anybody. I'm helping them so that I can feel useful independently of my actual usefulness to them based on their priorities, based on their preferences, based on their stated needs.
Let's check in with our Patreon live stream here in a moment. But first, real quick for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the minimalists. I wrote down 12 years of minimalist. I think we need to do an episode called that because this week, Ryan Nicodemus, you and I, we ponied up $7 and we bought this little domain called theminimalists.com.
I still owe you $350. Thanks for reminding me.
Ryan's close to being debt free.
And so if you look December 14th, 2010, and you've got a hyphen, actually technically be an in dash, but we'll get into that in some other How to Write Better podcast episode. And then you have now, which is December 2022. We have 12 years. And the thing that I realized just yesterday, Ryan, is that we have now been doing the minimalism thing for longer than we did the corporate world thing.
It's wild.
This week.
It's so wild.
I was 12 years in the corporate world, climbed the corporate ladder, achieved all of this success. So we're at this, it's equidistant for us right now. We're at this middle point where it's 24 years of corporate on one side, minimalism on the other side. And there's a whole lot that's represented by that little hyphen between 2010 and 2022. We've done so much over the course of these 12 years. I never anticipated us making a documentary, let alone two, or the Emmy nominations, or the books, or starting this podcast.
Yeah, being a New York Times bestseller. Joshua Fields Milburn.
Fancy. and what I've realized is that all of the moments that really mattered in between 2010 and now it has something to do not with achievement, like a New York Times thing or Emmy nomination or whatever else. It has to do with the people who we've helped heal. And that healing started with ourselves. And that's what Dr. Nicole's book is really about. It's about self-healing in a way. And this journey allowed us to heal ourselves and share how we have healed. And that enabled a lot of healing in other people, a lot of self-healing for them as well. Speaking of, on a personal note, this week, I'm going overseas for a stem cell treatment. And so I'll be gone for a week. I've had this terrible autoimmune disease for the last 4 years. And so while I'm gone, Bex and I, we're going to fly overseas. And I'm going to do this week-long stem cell thing, hoping that it improves my autoimmune condition. And in the process, I'm going to be listening to my favorite albums from 2022. And so every year for the last, 12 years now, I've put out a list of my favorite albums of the year. Sorry, TK. Once again, no Christmas album has made this list.
Did Bieber have a 2022 album?
No, I don't think so. But there's a whole list. If you are on our email list, that'll come out to you this week. You can also find it at theminimalists.com/sound, as in the sound of life. Music's been a very important part of my journey and us being the Minimalists. We're always bringing musicians on the road with us when we do tour stops. We've been doing the Sunday symposiums with live music. And live music, or just music in general, creates a soundtrack for our lives. And so if you want to find some of my favorite music from the last 12 months, theminimalists.com/sound, or sign up for our email list. It'll show up right there in your inbox. And you can also let me know. Send me a tweet or a message on any of the social media platforms. Let me know what your favorite album of the year was. Let's check in with our Patreon live stream real quick, Alabama. You got a question for us?
I sure do. Here's a question from Minimalist Gecko. I spend nearly half of my income and a ton of time traveling to my job, but my partner insists that the stability and benefits make it worthwhile. How do I explain to them the misery it's causing me doesn't make it worth it to me?
It's worth your misery, TK.
I love that you get to decide. Isn't that the best when other people tell folks what's worth their time?
Yeah.
Oh, man. But I get the complexity when it's a spouse, right?
Yeah.
Or when it's a significant other. It feels like the rules ought to be different, right? I mean, how do you tell your significant other? The same way you told us. You tell them truthfully. You tell them eye to eye. You tell them face to face. You tell them with transparency and conviction. And you tell them with all the feeling that is there, right? I know that you say it's worthwhile for me to do this, and I understand why it's worthwhile to you, and I still want to fight for what's worthwhile to you, but I need to fight in a way that doesn't erode my soul. I need to fight in a way that doesn't make me dead inside. I need to fight in a way that allows me to still show up and be a self that actually has the capacity to enjoy the benefits of my work. And I'm losing me in the quest for this thing that is supposed to be worthwhile at the expense of my own soul. I never knew what selling my soul looked like, but now I'm starting to get a glimpse of what that might be for me. I think you got to just say it like it is. You know, say it like it is. And then say, is there a way we can fight together for what's worthwhile without it being something that makes me feel like my life is hell?
Is it to mellow the I could prove to you that you don't want to be happy?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's just so true. So what does he say, Josh? He says...
So he's got this book called Awareness, and he says, you don't want to be happy. The first step in becoming happy is realizing that you don't want to become happy.
Right.
Now, what does that mean? You don't want to be happy. Yes, I do. Oh, no, you don't. I can prove it to you. I want you to go to the person who's closest to you or one of the people closest to you and say, I would rather have happiness than have you.
Yeah.
Imagine how difficult it is to say that.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to say that because we think, well, there's a lot of hubris caught up in this as well. I need to be your source of happiness, and I need you to be my source of happiness. But what happens here in those cases is that is now conditional love, which is not love at all. Love with conditions is like, or in this case, it is misery. It creates a particular kind of misery. I need you to need me, and I need you. And therefore, we're both unhappy, but at least we're unhappy together.
Yeah. Yeah. And so from that perspective, there's just something about realizing that, okay, happiness is not the ultimate goal. But, to get practical with this question, what your partner wants is stability and security. So that if you want to get your partner on board, you have to show them that you're still able to provide that security and stability. It might be in a different way. Maybe it's a little less money, but the amount of money doesn't really matter as long as your partner still feels that sense of security. So that's what I would, challenge this person to think, Minimalist Gecko to think, like, how can you show your partner that you're still going to provide what they need?
Yeah.
Or what they desire.
By the way, I spent a lot of time in my life being kind of like a pushover, where I would be truly angry at people and truly upset with the way they were treating me. And I just couldn't understand why they wouldn't respect my consistent pleas. Somebody maybe would push me a certain way and I'd be like, come on, man, chill, stop. And they do it again. Come on, man, stop, chill out, man. And they do it again. And I just couldn't understand it. Like, I'm verbalizing that I don't like this. I'm literally saying, come on, man, chill. I'm honestly showing how I want to be bothered. And I would resent people because I would feel like you're making me evil. Like, you need me to be the kind of person who's going to punch you in the face in order for you to get the point that I don't like what you're doing. And so then I started to get really upset at people. And
that's never helpful.
Never helpful.
Especially with Gecko's question here, bringing that emotion into this. Hey, you are making me miserable. Yep. That is a way to escalate, and then the other person becomes defensive, and then you become defensive, or you become offensive, and they become offensive, and you're creating World War III in your household, as opposed to simply saying, hey, this is making me miserable. Can we work together so you can help me find an off-ramp for my own misery?
That's right. And what I learned from that is people don't respond to how you feel on the inside, and they don't always respond to your verbalization of emotion. But what they respond to is the commitment you have to establishing a boundary and still being able to love them from within that boundary. So what changed for me is when I started telling people, hey, look, when I say chill, I really mean it. I need that to stop. I need that to be the last time that it ever happens. Now, we can be cool. We can still be homies. But if that's a boundary that can't be respected, we can't be cool. We can't be homies, but I really need that to stop, right? And I think in this case, you don't have to say, look, you can take the highway or my way. But I think there is space to say, hey, look, I truly can't do this anymore. I'm no longer physically and psychologically available for this particular thing. I thought I could, but I was wrong. However, I am totally committed to figuring out what's best for us. I'm totally committed to getting the things that we agreed that we're going to get, or having a conversation about what a viable alternative would be. But I can't go about it this way. I think that's fair.
We have several more questions from the live stream. We'll check in with those later on the private podcast. But before we get to our listener tip today, coming up on the Maximal episode this week, we've got a million more questions for Dr. Nicole LePera. You can check her out over there. She answered a bunch of questions with us. We also have some more questions from social media and the live stream. We've got a private minimalist home tour. Nicodemus will be joining us for that one. We have our Amass It or Trash It segment, TK's Tweet of the Week. We have an outstanding added value segment. It's my favorite piece of clothing. I'll just leave it at that. Added value, my favorite piece of clothing. And we've got much, much more of less. And if you want to hear all that, check out the Minimalist private podcast at patreon.com/theminimalist. Alabama, what else you got for us?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
This is Elizabeth from Houston, Minnesota. And like many families, we have struggled with calendar clutter. I felt like I was always telling people we should get together, but then rarely following through. A few years ago, we started Monday Fun Day, where every Monday in June through August, we host a potluck gathering at our house. We usually run 5 p.m. to dark. It's a no pressure, no obligation event. We set up outside and we get anywhere from 20 to 40 people every week. We don't make any special changes around the house or do any extra special cleaning. Our guests just get to see us as we are. Now, when I run into family and friends, I just invite them to Monday Fun Day. I find we have stronger, better connections with people and less stress about schedules and obligations.
All right, y'all, that's our minimal episode for today. We'll see you on Patreon for the full 3-hour maximal edition of episode 370. Dr. Nicole LePera will be there with us to answer a bunch more of your questions. By the way, shout out to Dr. LePera. You can check out her new book. It's called How to Meet Yourself. You can also follow her, and millions of other people do this. Follow her on social media. We'll put links to her social media in the show notes. She's known as the Holistic Psychologist over there. And you can check out her podcast. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. You can find all of those show notes at theminimalists.com/podcast. If you leave here today with just one message, please let it be this. Love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.